Welcome to a special edition of Litter Media Live. I'm Mike Smith, your host, and joining us in the studio today, we have State Representative Mark Johnson. Our interview today brought to you by Litter Quality Propane. When we come back, we're going to be talking about a bill that Mark just introduced in the Ohio House called Andy's Law, and we'll tell you more about that in just a moment. First of all, we want to tell you about our great sponsor, Litter Quality Propane. Custom tank colors and wraps. Find out how a propane tank can be beautiful at litterpropane.com. Back with State Representative Mark Johnson. Mark, this Andy's Law was in honor of Ross Correctional Institution officer Andrew Lansing, who was murdered by an inmate just this past Christmas Day.
That is correct. It was probably one of the saddest moments in our community. It affected almost everyone in this community. If you drove around Chillicothe during that week afterwards, there was not one American flag that was not half-staff, and restaurants and everywhere. Somebody even got up on the Texas Roadhouse and lowered that flag on that steep pitched roof up there. But it was quite the effect here in our county, and we are going to try to rectify by some common sense reforms to our prisons.
Mark, your bill addresses what you believe. I think Phil Plummer, state representative, is a co-sponsor, that there are some systemic problems in security at our state prisons.
Yeah, we have we're talking about the most violent prison in Ohio is right here in Chillicothe at RCI. And violence is a common way of life out here. It's not only violence upon our officers and staff, it's also violence amongst them, the inmates themselves. We've got a prison out here in 12 months, we had 1,800 overdoses of drugs. 1,800, we got about 2,100 prisoners and inmates. And to me, that's not acceptable. I compare that, Mike, to at the State House, we have the Rife Building and we have the Rhodes Tower. If each one of those buildings had 900 overdoses in each one, just 900, that's half of what we have in this facility in a 12-month period. I think somebody in Columbus, Ohio would take action to try to correct and get the drugs out of here. You know, that is a major problem out here. And they come into the prison multiple ways, and we need a full-time K-9 unit out here. We need K-9 units on visitation days. When people come in to visit, we have full contact visitation, and many times it comes in that way. We have a private food service company that comes in, and they pay relatively low wages, and they are the cheapest to buy off. Now, we also have had in the past some correction officers that would bring them in, and those guys charge far more higher prices is what we have in discovery. Whenever one is prosecuted, we have some prosecution and investigation. Sometimes it don't even get investigation. We just, to convey drugs into a prison is an F3 felony. And it could be held up to 3 years in prison if the judge decided to do such. But we've got a problem, and it needs to be addressed. And I think that myself and probably Phil Plummer are some of the few people in Columbus that said Andy Lansing did not have to die. The state failed Andy Lansing.
The prison systems have been in Chillicothe for many years.
That's correct.
Why all of a sudden is this lack of security, seemingly lack of security, occurring?
Well, if you recall, back in the 90s, I think it was 93, Lucasville had to riot. And legislation was passed to stiffen it up. We're going to stiffen up the situation. We are going to have much more secure prisons. And it's well known that, we have far more violent inmates today than we did back then. Back then it was pretty bad. So the legislation takes action, And then it slowly over the years' time gets chipped away and chipped away. We have different reasons why we do such, and we have sometimes an inmate that was mistreated or whatever. And trust me, I do not want any inmate mistreated in any prison. That's simply, we are a country of law and order, and we need to have law and order even behind the walls of our prisons, because we have many, many inmates that all they want to do is do their time and get out of there. So we have multiple levels of prisons. We have a level 1 and level 2, and those are our low violent prisons, so to speak, compared to a level 3. And level 3 is what RCI across the street at Chillicothe Correction, that's a lower level. And also it's a less violent prison. So we have multiple lower level prisons scattered out around the state. We have level 3s at Lebanon and Mansfield and maybe another location or two. And then we have the maximum security, which is Lucasville, Youngstown, and Toledo. And the newest one of the bunch is Youngstown, and it was built after Lucasville, and to try to eliminate that. So we have a grading system. If you behave yourself in a level 4, you get knocked down to a level 3. If you behave yourself in a level 3, you can go to a level 2, 1, or 2. And it's a behavioral system, and we have a ticket system that we write tickets up when people misbehave. But, Andy Lanson's killer had 11 tickets in 12 months, and several of the tickets were written by Andy. And Andy was a great American, served two terms in the military. He even took a leave of absence to help the United States military set up prisoner of war, humanitarian prisons in Iraq. And he was 62 years old. His killer was 27 and violent. And I think drugs played a role into it. And it's just simply common sense to me that we need to take action to try to have some corrective measures and just common sense things.
This Andy's law bill, I think you said 85 pages?
Yes.
So what are some of the big ticket items, not price-wise, but the things that might make the biggest difference in this bill for safety, not only for the guards and the staff, but inmates?
I've spent the last 4.5 to 5 months just investigating, had town hall meetings, talking to management staff, and I am somewhat the term name, I'm the corrections guy in the legislation, because I am the vice chair of the Corrections Inspection Committee for the House and Senate. The House takes a turn at being chair, and then the Senate takes a turn being chair. So right now this year, the Senate has the chair, and I have the vice chair. So I'm part of the Corrections Inspection Committee, and we get very little information given to us. So it's in Andy's law that we want transparency between the administration and the Corrections Inspection Committee.
It seemed like from some things you told me earlier before we went on the air that it's almost like you're talking about transparency, that there are things that have happened out there that are not being told to the public.
That's correct. There's multiple things, drugs for one thing. In 12 months' time, a 12-month period, I think it might have been from January to December, we had 1,800 overdoses at RCI alone, 1,800. So let's put that in perspective. In Columbus, Ohio, across from the Capitol is the Rife Building. It's a 31-story building. And on the other side of Broad Street is the Rhodes Tower. If these two facilities had 1,800 overdoses combined, somebody in Columbus would be wanting to know what's going on, why do we have such a mess, and let's clean it up. But when we have overdoses, it's not only RCI. At Mansfield, we had a mass overdose. We called out every ambulance in the town of Mansfield. This was just 4 weeks ago. And it's continuing on. The drugs come in multiple ways. It can come in through packaging or through publications. Again, we don't have K9 units screening our packages. We have package screeners, and our drug dealers are pretty smart, and the people in this business, you just change the formula up on K2. K2 right now is the drug of choice. We also have meth, and we've had some fentanyl, and the fentanyl come in at Mansfield. We also had a run of bad drugs at RCI last month, and several hauled out. And every time we haul out, we call a local ambulance and get a bill for it. We're in the tune of about $2,000 each. Then you get an emergency room bill and a doctor bill, and then we haul them back and put them in their cell and give them a ticket.
Are weapons being brought in as easily as the drugs?
Not to my knowledge, no. And, I don't think you do have a screening that'll detect when you go in to visit, there is a screener that detects a gun. It's similar to what you have at an airport or if you go to the courthouse or whatever. But K2 can be put on a sheet of paper, and you can have multiple hits on one sheet. I mean, if you bring in a little booklet or something, I mean, that's a mother load of drugs. It's just on a piece of paper. And
wow.
And that's how it goes in. And, we had an Aramark food service employee busted down at Lucasville, and he got prosecuted. And in his statement, he was paid $1,500 to make a drop. $1,500 is real cheap to an inmate. They have money out here, and money's not the problem to get your drugs. And, drugs are probably just as easy to get inside the walls as it is outside the walls currently in our prisons.
That's just unbelievable. It's hard to believe. That's an area you would certainly think that's not going on, but you're telling us it is, and at a rampant rate. And talk to any correction officers, they'll verify it. Anybody that works at RCI or Lucasville, I mean, any of the higher ranking prisons is got an issue. Now, we have issues in the level 1s and 2, but they're less violent. And a lot of the percentage in the prison inmate population, they just want to do their time and get out of here. But when you have this high of level of drugs, you've got also have a gang problem and communication amongst themselves, and then when we have this private food service running our just in the cafeteria themselves, they're not running the cafeteria, but they're all mixed up with inmates cooking and serving food. And yes, we still have to put correction officers in this facility to watch over this. In my opinion, all we need is a kitchen manager and let the inmates themselves cook their own food. And we still have the correction officers overseeing it. And I wanted to do a pilot program in just one prison, and we remove this workforce, this low-wage workforce, and just see just how we slow this intake down. It also comes in through visitation because we have full contact visitation in not only our level 3s, but level 4s too. I mean, you can go in and hug each other if you're not supposed to hug each other, but often they do. A guy comes in and he's sitting across from me on a little coffee table, and I pull my shoe out. I'm wearing a set of loafers like I have on right now, and he slides something in my shoe, and I put my foot back in, and boom, I've got a load of drugs. And we have no K9 units searching our visitation people at all. We do have a screener that'll keep maybe a gun from coming in. Obviously, you're in support of the bill that you propose, but I would imagine you would be wanting our voters out there that are watching this interview and hearing this information to contact their representatives, their senators, and say, let's fix this.
We definitely need to fix that. Also in Andy's law is a minimum sentence if you kill any person that's employed in the prison, whether that be a correction officer, a member of the staff, the warden, or a contractor in there. You know, oftentimes we have, like we're going to do an electrical upgrade of the lighting out there. If you kill a contractor out there working on the lights, I mean, we got to protect the people behind the walls. And, you know, the way things operate today, we still have the death penalty, but we haven't utilized the death penalty in a long, long time. And then we're in an area of law now that we make a lot of plea deals. Mm-hmm. And so we plea bargain that down to life in prison. In Andy's law, you have life in prison, 10 years minimum in a maximum security prison. You will not be at RCI. You'll be either Lucasville, Youngstown, or Toledo. So that's in there, and that's the minimum for killing an officer. Because what happens is the judge may send them to prison for life, and then we go into an appeal and may have a different judge or a visiting judge or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then we get a reduced prison sentence on appeal. It may go down to little as 20 years in prison instead of life in prison. Mm-hmm. So we got to try to avoid that. And then we've also got for assault on an officer or a member behind the wall, if you assault one, you get an additional 7 years. We got to get the assaults under control. You know, it's not uncommon for officers, sergeants, even lieutenants, if they're in a cell block, to have urine thrown on them or feces. And that currently is an F3, but very few times does it get a highway patrol investigation and prosecution. You know, we've got a prosecution issue too in many counties. You know, we've got double trouble because we have 2 prisons across the street from each other, and each one contains well over 4,000 inmates. And we've got 2 judges and our prosecutor. And in the budget is an extra $250,000 to try to help the prosecutor prosecute prison cases. We haven't quite figured out the judicial side of it because Ohio law is you have to be prosecuted in the county you're charged in. So we've got 2 judges that probably right now are busier than most counties. And, you know, do we need a 3rd judge? And then if you get a 3rd judge, who pays for it? And we've only got 2 courtrooms here. And can the prison systems build a courtroom or whatever? I don't know. That's yet to be worked out. That's not in Andy's law about the judicial side, but we are having conversations about that. So the prosecutions is just as important. I've done research. Warren County does great on prosecution. Little Noble County, it has a level 2 prison. They do great. And also Scioto County, who has Lucasville. And Scioto County had a track record of a lot of problems at Lucasville, but it's better down there than it is. At least we get prosecution. And then we have a lot of people that's caught bringing drugs in instead of being called for the highway contacted for an investigation. The Highway Patrol does the investigations in our state prisons. And instead of being contacted, we just allow them to resign and walk out the door. And nothing's on their record. If you do a background check, they're scot-free.
Wow. So that's Andy's law. That's what, and you can people get online and see everything that's in the law?
Go to my website, just Ohio House, Mark Johnson, and dash legislation. And it lists all the bills that I'm sponsoring. And Andy's law is the last one. I believe it's Ohio House Bill 338, if I recall. And it's public. You can get on there and read it. I think we've got a summary of it and all the different issues, how it modifies the Ohio Revised Code. And the reason it's 84 pages, it takes up 84 pages in the Ohio Revised Code to address the multiple issues that we're trying to address.
That was number one reason why we wanted Representative Johnson in today. But before we let you go, and Mark's got to get to the legislature for some business today, there's been a lot in the news here in Ohio about property taxes. Before
Right.
you go, what can you tell us about that?
We have a former auditor. His name is David Thomas, and he's from Ashtabula County. And he's a freshman legislator, and he's brought forth multiple different measures on property tax reform. You know, property tax reform, we have an Ohio Constitution that has property tax in there. And in the Ohio Constitution, it's 35% of your appraised value. It's been in there for a long, long time. And it also, in the Ohio Constitution, everybody is to be taxed equitably. So your neighbor can't get a better deal than you. We can't utilize the California model. In California, you buy your home, your property tax is pretty well set until you sell, and it's not they don't have the reassessment, but that penalizes the people that are out a young couple trying to get a home, and they pay huge amounts of property tax because they recently buy. You know, right now in LA and San Francisco, few people actually own a home out there. So that model really doesn't work well for the people living in the homes. When you have a whole town and nobody owns a home, you know, that's just the way life is out there. And they, you know, of course they have a lot of other issues. But so we have property tax reform. It's multiple issues to deal with. And in my opinion, it will be the most significant property tax reform. And we have been debating multiple different bills. We're going to take the best of the multiple bills that we have the votes for and wrap it up into one bill and try to roll that into the operating budget that we are working on right now. This operating budget must be into law by July 1st to keep our state government operating. So that's in there. It's going to save a homeowner maybe over $800 on a $100,000 home come January 1st. When they get the following year property bill, it won't help you for July's property bill, but it will be the following year. It pretty much turns all assessment responsibility over to the county auditor, and we have a budget commission that's rarely used across the state of Ohio, and it's debatable whether it's even legal for our budget commission. You know, it's in the statute. It says they may have this. And we're going to put where they shall have this, and your county budget commission will be evaluating some of these property tax levies on the amount. They look at the entity and see what their carryovers are and so forth, and determine whether they need, you know, if property values go up 30%, oftentimes they don't need an additional 30% in revenue.
Right. Well, Mark, we know you need to get to the State House in Columbus. We appreciate your taking time to tell us about these important issues.
It's always a pleasure to be out in the community, and many people have my cell phone and so forth. I tried my best to be out in the community where you can find me easily, and so it's an honor to serve you. Lord willing, and I'm reelected again. I plan to run again. I've got one more term, and I'll be term limited out in 3 years. And I truly want to make a difference in the next 3 years.
Mark, thanks for being with us today. Again, State Representative Mark Johnson, our guest on Special Edition, brought to you by Litter Quality Propane. I'm Mike Smith.